Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest installment of Strata's Orchestration Kitchen. Today, we're going to be talking about how to migrate from Keycloak to Amazon Cognito and how to do that seamlessly, how to do that without any changes to your applications, and what's the fastest way to get off of that on-prem IDP into a new cloud IDP of you're choosing, especially as you're looking at AWS as you're shifting to the cloud. Today, I'm joined by two guests. My co-host, as always, is Chef Terry Cozard, who is on Strata's sales engineering team. And we have a special guest today, Kevin Shanley, who is the identity principal for go-to-market at Amazon Web Services. So, Kevin, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. Well, as we jump into the kitchen, we follow a common format on each of our episodes, and that's no different today. So what we're going to do as we look at this really spicy challenge for identity is first, we're going to do a quick overview of what identity orchestration as a technology is, just to level set and help everyone understand what it is that we're going to be cooking with today. Now, as we think about what we're cooking with, let's also look at the ingredients. And one of the key ingredients here, of course, is Amazon Cognito. And Kevin's going to be giving us a quick overview of Cognito and what it is capable of doing for us. Next, we'll jump into the whiteboard where Terry is going to walk us through what the structure of this recipe looks like, sort of the wireframe and lay it all out and how it comes together. We'll cook with the recipe. We're going to jump in and do this live demo. And then, of course, we'll have it open for Q&A at the end. Now, our audience, feel free to post questions at any time. Use the question button on your screen. We'll be monitoring those. And if we don't get to them during the course of the episode, we'll get to them at the end. So be sure to share your feedback and any questions that you'd like to pose for myself or our guests. So as we get into this, let's set the stage a little bit just for a moment. Terry, Kevin, as we're thinking about why Cognito and why somebody's going to be moving to a cloud IDP, we think about Keycloak is this open source solution for customer identity and access management. And it's an excellent option for an organization that's very developer friendly and has had a long-standing on-prem infrastructure and on-prem compute and data center. But as they're looking to make that leap to the cloud, and of course, AWS is the common leap that they're looking at. Kevin, what are some of the reasons, that you're thinking about why somebody would be looking at Cognito specifically as they're moving off of an on-prem environment?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. I think the big things here are most folks or organizations that look to use Keycloak look at this as, hey, this is a great open source solution. We can run it, and it really works well. Unfortunately, though, when you start to move into the cloud, then some of those costs that were maybe baked into your existing data center infrastructure and all that, now this stuff, it's now going to be called out a little bit more explicitly as you move out to the cloud. And of course, you want to modernize on cloud technologies. You don't want to just lift and shift your infrastructure over there. And so, as a part of this, it's not just a matter of moving over to your cloud. You want to be able to decommission your old infrastructure, be able to turn off all that stuff. Go to cloud modern technologies, use those cloud specific approaches, and then go to a cloud native identity and access management solution. And with Cognito, you get all of that. AWS, being a quite an important cloud provider overall, is a major place where customers go to in their move to the cloud. And Cognito is that built-in customer identity and access management platform.
Great. Well, tell you what, Chef Cozard, let's jump into this. Let's take a quick look at identity orchestration, and then Kevin, we're going to give it back to you because we want to hear a little bit more about Cognito.
Absolutely. So appreciate the opportunity to tell everybody a little bit about it. Identity orchestration is something that's a bit of a buzzword that you hear a lot these days. But let me tell you what we think of it, and we believe that we pioneered this space, is that really the idea of orchestration as we think about it is to create a control plane that allows you to switch in and out capabilities, technologies, all around the identity functions that are most important to you. So as one looks at this, at the very bottom, essentially what we're going to be doing is, sitting in the user journey of a user before they get to the applications they're trying to access. It doesn't matter if the application is a modern federated one or a non-standard legacy-based application. The orchestration fabric allows you to protect all of them using the greatest new capabilities that Cognito can offer, even if the application was written at a time before those standards existed. So the net result is that all of the common identity functions that you might use, authentication, access control, go fetching attributes, centralized authorization engine, whatever that function may be, we allow you to swap in and out of that. And we're actually going to show you that as we make the recipe as we go later. But the last mile is actually what the secret sauce is of our identity orchestration capability, is that down at the application, every application that's ever been written understands that it's got an authenticated, authorized user in some way, shape, or form. And so the ability of orchestration allows you to modernize those applications to fully take advantage of all the capabilities of Cognito in a way that the application doesn't need to be rewritten, doesn't need to have SDKs installed, none of that heavy lift kind of things. That's the benefit of identity orchestration.
Awesome. Well, you talk about quick and fast, not having to make any changes, and all those functions and features of Cognito. Kevin, I'd love to give you the floor for a moment to share a little bit about Cognito as an IDP.
Sure thing. So, I guess in a nutshell, what is Amazon Cognito? Well, if we start there at the bottom with the out-of-the-box support for open standards, it's maybe first and foremost a federation hub. It is a way, it is an identity provider and a service provider. So it can, you can log into any of your workforce providers, other identity providers, even social providers, and then have us, essentially with your identity in that hub, send you on downstream to applications with OAuth and OpenID Connect. And likewise, you don't even need to use these federation capabilities. We also offer right out of the box a built-in user store with strong forms of authentication, adaptive auth, whole compromised password database. So we pick this up from the dark web of passwords that have actually been compromised. And then every time someone goes to change their password, or even every time they go to log in, we look to see if their password has been compromised and force them to change it. So of course there's a multi-factor authentication support. And along with that, a 99.939's SLA, although we're actually going up to 4.9s coming soon.
Okay.
And with that, so we move up to, how do you actually deploy this stuff? Well, we've got a built-in UI for the login pages, the sign-up, sign-in pages. Most folks actually use the flexible, scalable APIs and SDK support in that top left corner there. So we've got some of the best language support in the business. And being a customer identity and access management platform, well, customers love to really customize this stuff. Mm-hmm. And if you think about going to your workforce provider, you can often see what SSO provider you're using. Like, they don't customize it because you don't need to. It's your employees. Customers, you go to log into a bank, you have no idea what they're using, right? It's all been completely customized. And so we do have a lot of tools around that as well, right? Specifically for customer IAM. So going down to that next one where you see AWS Amplify Studio, and Pinpoint. So we actually have built-in integrations where most web developers will then go and create their UI with a program like Figma. With Figma, you can then export those designs right into code in Amplify Studio. And Cognito is actually the back-end authenticator for Amplify. So essentially, you can then go right from UI design all the way to infrastructure running in the cloud, all within that same platform with Cognito as your back-end. We have specialized integrations as well with Pinpoint. There you can do things like do customer outreach and track their ingress as they come back into your site, maybe for a sale that you were trying to advertise. So a lot of great integrations for that. And finally, last but certainly not least, on the bottom there left, extensible authentication authorization support. So when we look at things like Keycloak or like some of these other providers, you often need to bake OAuth, OpenID Connect, and things either right into your app or use some other sorts of open source components for that last mile of integration. Well, this stuff's already all built into the Amazon infrastructure. And it's one of the reasons why you'd actually go into a native cloud provider IAM. So anytime you deploy an application load balancer, an API gateway, an app sync component, these things have native Cognito integration points, policy enforcement points built right into these infrastructure components. So we already take care of all that last mile of integration for you. And then in addition, we have a lot of other interesting integrations. We integrate natively with the web application firewall to stop bot attacks. And we offer things like fine-grained permissions and authorization with verified permissions. which also has a strong integration to Cognito. And you can really customize the heck out of it using AWS Lambdas. Cognito has a bunch of hooks that allow you to execute custom code all throughout your journey.
Love it. And in fact, that's one of the topics we were going to get into. A little bit of a sneak peek ahead is, where would Amazon verified permissions fit into this? And we'll speak to that as we get into the actual cooking here as well. Now, one thing I'd like to do is sort of set the stage. So Chef Terry, Kevin, as we're looking at this, today's conversation is one around modernizing application identity from Keycloak to Cognito. There's an assumption that we're making ahead of time in this recipe, and that's about users having been migrated. Correct, Terry?
Yeah, I think there's that assumption does exist. I know, Kevin, there's a number of ways that can be done. If you want to spend a second just to illuminate that.
So yeah, for the user migration, we're talking specifically.
Yes. Yep.
Sure. There are a couple different ways. I think there's actually like 4 or so different ways, but we usually boil it down to 2 main ones, which is you can do a bulk migration and you can do a just-in-time migration. Now, the bulk migration is kind of what you'd think. You just do a big bulk export of users out of your user store and then bulk import into Cognito. The big problem with that, though, is you don't have the passwords in clear text. And so there's no way we can actually migrate those passwords across. You end up resetting everyone's password,
Right.
Which is not the customer experience you're probably looking for. Now, the just-in-time migration takes care of all that, where essentially we have, as I mentioned, you have these lambdas where you can do integrations. We have something called a migration lambda. And what this allows you to do is when a user logs into your system, we look locally to see if you're in the database. And if not, we execute this lambda migration, which will actually execute your username and password against your target system, say Keycloak, to see if you get a successful response. If so, you now know the password, you have it in clear text, you can go get the additional user attributes and just in time populate your user directory in the cloud with that user. So as your users log into the system, you're seamlessly adding all those users to your cloud store. And I would say most customers actually do something of a hybrid approach where just-in-time migration is fantastic, but what if your customers only log in once a year or once every 6 months?
Right.
If you're at a shoe store or something, how often do you really buy shoes and then go back online to maybe buy them again? And so what customers will generally do is they'll have a window where they're capturing to get the majority of their users, get their passwords across, and ones that they don't get, they just bulk migrate them across, decommission the old system, and then move on and reset those passwords.
Gotcha. Well, that's great. So we've got the foundation. Now, we talked about the audience. You mentioned the customization and personalization of that sign-in experience, especially with financial institutions. Well, we actually have a number of those in our audience today. And as we switch to the whiteboard and we look at the recipe now, Terry, we also have a number of academic institutions who are in our audience today. So I'm sure they're going to appreciate, sort of the sketch throughout. How do we do this, and what are we planning to cook? And then we're actually going to go out and cook it. So, Chef Terry, what are we planning to cook today?
So this is the ultimate result of the recipe. We're going to work together. We're going to start with Keycloak, obviously. That's the subject of our session. And then we're going to end up in Cognito. We're going to do this in the course of a few minutes. You're all welcome to follow along at home whenever you want to actually go cook with this exact recipe yourself. But the end result of it is that in the upper echelon of the slide, we've got a user trying to access an application over on the right. And sitting in the middle of it, these are legacy application patterns. So what we're showing here is how we can help through orchestration allow you to get to Cognito for those applications that were written before SAML and OIDC and all those kind of modern federation protocols can do. That's one of the many great things orchestration as a concept can bring along. So the orchestrator will sit midstream in that user journey. And then we're going to say, hey, you need to go to Cognito in order to prove who you are in whatever ways that you set up Cognito to do that for. We then optionally, if there's a need or desire to go to other places to get additional information about your users, we can do that dynamically in a simple declarative manner through the fabric. And then ultimately, the Amazon verified permissions, that next standard, that next capability that you may want to introduce to your applications, the fabric automatically understands those kinds of things if you want to add keys or whatever it may be.
Got it.
So there's 3 simple steps to do all this. I'll show you conceptually what that looks like. First step is we're going to create what we refer to as the identity fabric. These are the deeper integration points within your ecosystem. So in our case, we're going to start with Keycloak because that's the origin, and then we're going to create the destination as well. We then can optionally do those things like LDAPs, but that's really up to you if you need that information in a way that it naturally wants to sit somewhere else. Step 2, we're going to actually tell the orchestrator fabric about the application that we're protecting. Again, we can interact with modern legacy applications, whatever it may be. But the idea is you have to tell us which applications we're responsible for and how does the application expect to know information about its users. So we're going to do that together as well. Third step, we're going to stitch it all together and create a user flow or a user journey. So we're going to determine for the application or applications, how do we want to authenticate? Well, clearly we want to go to Cognito. That's the best platform out there, in my humble opinion, for SIAM-related applications. But then as you want to additionally add new capabilities, attributes, sources, Amazon verified permissions, whatever it may be, we can declaratively get all that working for you as well.
That's great. And I know that we've talked about this before, but my shameless plug to this is that we modernize once and you're flexible forever. What we're talking about here is a single step that then allows you to remain permanently flexible for all those additional services. And we're doing all of this, can't reinforce this enough, without touching the application. We're not having to do rewrites. We're not having to do refactors. We're able to do this at scale. We're able to do this in a phased fashion. I mean, these all sound really interesting. And I know, from a developer first perspective, very exciting. So, without further ado, how about we jump into the kitchen and start cooking?
Let's do it. All right. So now what I'm going to move to here is this is Mavericks. So this is our interface where you can import all the information that you need for your entire identity fabric ecosystem. So the way that I begin this, and the way that if you want to follow along yourself, you'll do is sign up for a free trial. You then can go to our Learning Center. This is where we publish the recipes as we have them in the kitchen and things like that. So the one that we're working with today, Keycloak to Cognito. And our goal is to make this absolutely powerful in your hands within minutes. So even if you've never had any training on the platform or orchestration as a concept, you now have the ability to come in and take a look, grab the actual template for the recipe itself, and you just create another one. I've already created it, so let me walk through what it looks like. When we created that recipe into Mavericks, we have 2 integration points, Keycloak and Cognito. Keycloak we're already pre-integrated with. It's a hosted version that Strata has out there for you to use through your own internal testing. Then Cognito, you can then set that up yourself. You'll need to create an application pool, get the region, and then you need to declare an application within Cognito so that it knows to trust the fabric. And that's standard metadata exchange that you're very, very familiar with. Step 1's complete. The next step is tell us information about the applications that we're protecting. The ones we're picking on in this recipe is a legacy-based application. It was built before standard ways to authenticate existed. So here we just need to understand in this pattern we're a proxy. We don't always have to be, but for this application we will be. So tell us where we're going to proxy, what pages may be interesting or important to you for that. Step 2 is done. Then step 3 is actually stitching it together in the user flow. So here in the user flow, let's review what it looks like as the before point where Keycloak's doing everything. We're doing this for the application. If you optionally wanted to add additional attribute providers, maybe something local that exists easily, we can just go ahead and grab that very easily. Not doing it in this recipe though. And then lastly, we set an access control policy. When we let people into this application, under what conditions do we do that? Well, we're going to first make sure they're logged into Keycloak. And then secondarily, this particular application is expecting a header that it used to get from its old ecosystem. Now we say we're going to just create that header and we're going to do it from the email in Keycloak. Really straightforward. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like in action.
This is great. And by the way, Ian, you asked that question about how do we replicate those Keycloak policies over across to Cognito. Hopefully that gives you some insight into that approach.
Absolutely. So here, when I bring up a new browser, it allows me to try to go to the protected application. But by policy, the Fabric says, we don't know you yet. We have to go pass you through authentication. We have Keycloak serve that function. And then, lo and behold, as exciting as single sign-on demonstrations are, you're into the application, and we're brokering that. So ultimately, the Fabric is protecting the application, and then Keycloak is the authentication source for us. So Keycloak, while wonderful, pales in comparison to the capabilities that Cognito brings to you. So let's show you how easy it is to move to Cognito. So here I'm back in my original user flow, and I'm just going to make a few small tweaks. First and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and set the access control policy. We no longer want to log in through Keycloak. We want to do it through Cognito. And then secondarily, the part where the application natively wants to know about things, we're not going to use Keycloak anymore. So we're going to get rid of that header.
Okay, Ian, hopefully you're watching this. This is mapping some of those things you were just asking about.
And then we're just going to say, rather than Keycloak, we're going to get the header information from the email attribute with Cognito. So that's as simple as it is to change kind of this baseline policy to get access to it. So now let's actually show that getting pushed out to our environment. The Fabric has an air-gapped architecture. And so what happens here is we'll go ahead and commit the changes that I made, and then I'm going to deploy it to my orchestrator. And so it'll take a few seconds, but the idea here is that the orchestrator actually isn't dependent on our UI at all. We deploy it in a manner that the orchestrator can go fetch it asynchronously without any risk of us being part of a rainy day scenario. So let's go ahead and deploy that. Sometimes takes 3, 4, 5 seconds in order for my orchestrator to come pick it up. So now that we've given it hopefully enough time, we'll go back to that same application and see what the user experience looks like now. Lo and behold, same orchestrator, same application, but now just through that quick policy change through our interface, you now have the ability to go to Cognito for all it needs to do for its authentication. You can take advantage of all the great advanced capabilities and features that come natively with Cognito for you. And lo and behold, you're back at the exact same application, all through a few minutes of effort through the orchestration. And we can do this not in a 1 or 2 section. We can do this at bulk for all of your applications. That's one of the major advantages of orchestrated solution, is that it gives you flexibility and tremendous agility for these kinds of features.
Love it. Love it. Well, Erin in our audience asked about interruption to applications in the process. She said she can't leave students offline while they do these migrations. It sounds like there may not be any interruption.
In many cases, there won't be. So the devil's always in the details. We want to have a deeper, richer conversation for you about that. But that really is the idea, is that we're allowing you to do these kind of capabilities quickly, seamlessly, and as you go along there.
That's great. That's great. Well, if we went back to the wireframe, we've worked, Kevin, with you and the AWS team quite a bit, especially around the new Amazon Verified Permissions offering. Terry, where would AVP, Amazon Verified Permissions, then fit into the equation after we've done this migration? We did a modernize once, permanently flexible. And by permanently flexible, where might AVP and that externalized authorization service sit?
Well, there's a number of ways that we can do it. So one of the common patterns is, now that the Fabric is protecting your application or applications, you now have the flexibility to go in and do that next bespoke thing, whether that be Amazon Verified Permissions or something just unique to your business flow. And we actually can do that down here by integrating to whatever you've got. If it's got an API or a standard or anything like that, we have the ability to quickly and seamlessly go interact with that to do a thing. So that would certainly apply for Amazon Verified Permissions or anything like it.
And because we're sitting in here at runtime, as we think through to emerging standards like continuous access evaluation, there's an opportunity to continually call these external services to see if anything's changed once the session's been created. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And so one of the common patterns that we see in security is that systems will do a fantastic job of calculating the likelihood of how risky a user might be at authentication point, which is super beneficial. But what happens if that has a long running session and bad things, the account got taken over an hour, 2 hours a day after they logged in? Well, there's kind of challenges there. So that's where new and upcoming standards like continuous access evaluation can come in, because the fabric can natively come in and query those things even when the application itself doesn't really know how to do those things.
Got it. Well, perfect. Last question I have over here is from Brian. And I think, Kevin, this one's a little bit more for you, which is simply, we didn't go into purposefully, this conversation today was very much around modernizing and migrating application identity. We did touch briefly on the users at the beginning. And the question from Brian is simply one of, is the user migration examples that you shared applicable for hundreds of thousands of customers as well?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we've done something very similar. In fact, you can check out YouTube. There's a recent video from Reinforce where we migrated Fandango, Rotten Tomatoes across to Cognito. They have 100 million user base.
No big deal, right? We went from hundreds of thousands to 100 million. Yes, no big deal. Okay. That's great. No, that's it. That was one of those perfect mic drop moments, my friend. That was yes, yes, and so yes, please take a look at that. And then you say that was on YouTube.
That's on YouTube. Yep.
Great. We'll make sure that everyone has a chance to look at that. So this was cool. The best part about the kitchen is we come in. This is not one of those HGTV remodeling shows where they're able to renovate a complete house in 30 minutes, or even a cooking show where they slide in the raw cookies and literally they're pulling out a pre-baked set of cookies. What we did today was live identity orchestration. That was truly modernization in minutes that you shared, Terry. And as we think about what's next. Of course, we want everyone to keep tuning in to the Orchestration Kitchen and go to the hub to look at this. But Terry, this recipe today, this one start to finish, someone could go do this right now.
Oh, quite literally. And we encourage you to. If you want to get your hands on the keyboard and actually see for yourself exactly what I built up, go to mavericks.strata.io. You can log in directly there. And if you go to Learning Center, as I showed you there, you'll have the step-by-step instructions. You'll be successful in this within a few minutes.
That's spectacular. Well, as anyone's looking or they have questions, more about the integration and the work together, you almost have your cell phone up here, but yes, Terry, what can they do with you?
Please, if there's any questions that got unanswered during our session, or if you're watching a video replay of this, reach out to me directly. I'm more than happy to field any questions that you may have. Even if you start going to our trial version and just have some questions or thoughts or just ponderings, please don't hesitate to reach out to Terry@strata.io.
Gotcha. Well, Kevin, any closing thoughts? I don't want to put you on the spot, but anything else you want to share from the kitchen today?
Oh gosh, this is super exciting and really neat to see how quickly that migration just cuts across. And one of the things that really hit me is, with any sort of a migration or where you're cutting over systems, I think about the risk of it, and really this enormously de-risks you because it comes up in the concept of, okay, we move you over, but let's say we forgot about something or something didn't test correctly, and now we need to roll back. Well, your rollback is as easy as the recipe to roll forward. And so, it's almost like a no risk operation. If you're doing this in the middle of the night, you try it, didn't work, roll it back. we'll fix it and do it again later. So this is incredibly powerful. I love it.
Oh, awesome. Well, we appreciate you joining us today and spending your time with us and our audience as well. This was a very valuable, we realize your time is expensive in 30 minutes. We're glad that you were able to share that time with us. We look forward to speaking with you more, whether it's about this recipe, going and actually cooking with it right now. There were plenty of developers that were in the RSVPs. Go do this right now. The recipe's waiting for you at mavericks.strata.io. And we also look forward to meeting you on our next episode of The Kitchen. Kevin, thanks again for joining us. Terry, as always, thanks for joining me on the journey. And we look forward to catching up with everyone as we tackle our next Spicy Identity Challenge on the Orchestration Kitchen. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.